Alright, so chapter 313 of Blue Log titled Opening Warriors has recently released, and the chapter starts off with the main players that were shown of the Nigeria U20 team playing soccer as kids. We see Onazi kick the ball while the other three are in a maze and cheering him on, calling him their shining hope. After a bit of exposition, including an explanation of the playoff match that decide the third place, and the fact that a total of 128 matches will be played, the match between Nigeria and Japan finally begins. We see Nigeria's captain and offensive midfielder Kuso with the ball, and he gets past Asagi while passing in between the legs of Rin and just out of the reach of Rayo, to an open space near Bachira when their right midfielder Bello gets it before he does. He then spins around Bachira, to which Bachira says nice twirl, and I feel like this alone already insinuates a lot about this team. This is a pretty strange pass to make, and one that Bachira could have or likely just would have stolen if he were trying harder, but there's likely just a deep and unmoving faith that the Nigeria players have for their own teammates, considering they're all childhood friends, or at least the majority of them. Despite that, it's just not the most optimal play, and this is likely to be intentional, as it's a point that's kind of reiterated when RU claims that Bello's pass was sloppy, but it works because Onazi is there, and it gives off the idea that this is a team of players who know each other like the back of their hands, and can set up each other nearly perfectly because they've been playing for years, even if the play itself is sloppy. It's worth mentioning that Onazi doesn't even outright deny what RU says, but just that it's all good because he is there. Aiku gets in front of Onazi, but Onazi sees a spot for him to shoot and takes it, to which then gets blocked by Nico. Karasu gets the ball and sends it down to Hiyori, who then sends it down to Rin, and Blue Lock has already arrived at the front line. Rin gets past two Nigeria U20 players and eventually to Abo Abana, and just flat out blitzes him, shooting the ball, which Onazi, after running all the way down the field, manages to block in time, saying once again that it's all good because he is there. The ball then falls to Asagi, who says no, I've already transcended them, and that he can see the vision of their victory, with this being the final page to end the chapter. Now, one thing before I go into why Nigeria just flat out has already lost this match, there was talk about Blue Lock not utilizing goalkeepers and strikers being defenders and this and that prior to this chapter being officially released, and I genuinely think that some Blue Lock fans just do not properly think about things before, like, saying things. Because even if you ignore everything else within the narrative or the plot of this match itself and just look at what's happening and the implications of what is happening, there is no world where this goalie blocking this shot makes any sense whatsoever. This is a goalkeeper on a team that has not a single new Gen 11 member, and I think that we can all agree that Nigeria is probably on the lower end of U20 teams as a whole, if not at the most just around the middle, meaning that there's going to be better teams with better players and by virtue better goalies even before getting to a new Gen 11 goalie. So this is a random goalie who's probably on the lower end of goalies within the U20, and this is Rin with Predator's Eye. Rin, even without Predator's Eye, is already, I'd argue, just full stop the best shooter in Blue Lock in front of the net. Like, I could see an argument for Shido in regards to his peak, but Loki's statement about their shot ratio just disproves this, generally speaking. If you think Shido has a higher ceiling, then sure, but generally speaking, Rin is clearly the most talented and skilled shooter within Blue Lock. Now add on Predator's Eye and what are we even talking about? You have to understand that yes, this is a football manga and a sports manga, but it's also very clearly a battle shonen. Kaneshiro has done blatant power scaling with ratings, even if that was temporary and pretty bad to be completely honest. But he does it to an extent, even with the values, that's pretty clear overall. There is a scale to these characters and how they compare to each other, and it's pretty definitive. Even in cases like Asagi and Rin who are on the same level, even if Rin is maybe more physically capable, you're never going to, for instance, see Nanase randomly stop Baro, or Kiora Jin outplaying Rin. The only instance we even have of a player playing beyond what they're known to do is maybe Hiyori during the Ubers match, but you could easily argue we just hadn't seen really much of what he could do because he was holding back for majority of the manga. So overall, the scaling of characters in Blue Lock is pretty solid and definitive. So how on earth could you possibly justify this shot by Rin being blocked, but then justify literally anybody else in Blue Lock scoring? You would be creating a scenario where there's somebody on Blue Lock who could shoot a shot more difficult to block than Rin with Predator's Eye, which I can tell you is not many if any on Blue Lock. And then in response to this, I've heard people say that, oh well, he could just write a goalie doing it regardless, or there could be a luck factor, or the goalie could predict it, but I don't really understand this point. To my knowledge, the entire reason for this complaint in the manga is that goalies don't really have much of a role. There aren't really many talented goalies. So your solution to that is to introduce a luck factor or prediction factor player that doesn't require any inherent talent, or simply just have Kaneshiro fitted in anyways, and essentially just have Kaneshiro create a bunch of inconsistencies and plot holes. I just don't really see the point of this complaint or really any logic behind it. But beyond the face value logistics, we literally do see the Blue Lock defenders actually defending. So it's not an actual problem. The reason that it happens for Nigeria is because of the entire narrative. If you just read the chapter, it's very clearly being painted within the narrative that this team specifically relies on Onazi as their star. He is quite literally their hope. Given his catchphrase, so to speak, of "I am here," he is literally a All Might reference, whether intentional or not. In the same way that All Might was the symbol of hope or peace, to the point where other heroes became too dependent on him or outright just lazy or sloppy, like Ryu says about Bello, because they know how good Onazi is, and that for the most part that he can just take a game into his own hands, being the defense and offense. They kind of just rely on him to do those things and kind of just be this all-around amazing player that can do it all. Onazi isn't blocking this just because Kaneshiro doesn't want to stop having strikers defend or have defenders do their job. It's literally a point of his character within the narrative in this team. Not to say that it's never happened before apart from this narrative, but it's clear that's the reason for this happening. But beyond the whole discussion of, defenders not being defenders and goalies not being goalies, leading into my next point in the title of this video, yeah, they're absolutely cooked. I mean, dog, if it wasn't that none of the Blue Lock players are even serious here, not a single Metavision user is using Metavision, not a single ounce of flow is present on this team. I mean, in general, they just don't even look serious here. Of course, apart from Rin using Predator's Eye or Asagi using Metavision at the very end of the chapter, the team is essentially just sandbagging and assessing Nigeria. But again, even if that wasn't enough, this team is essentially just Onazi and friends. I mean, without him popping off, Blue Lock would just score right here. Again, without a single Metavision user even using Metavision yet, and the most being done is Rin with Predator's Eye at the last minute. I mean, Rin's not even past the point of his usual self in calling people tepid yet. This game will likely stand to reinforce the idea or the theme that this is a team game at the end of the day, and one great or even amazing player still can't carry an entire team at this level, which is something that's probably being enforced upon Asagi in general, with him learning more about the world and how these other players and other teams play, which leads to him even pushing his own teammates during the training. And I mean, if Nigeria has more to show, that would be cool. I'm sure they're not just gonna, lie on their backs and just lose. But personally, for these reasons, I can't even imagine this being remotely close. I personally was never even on the train of people that thought that Nigeria would make this very close. I think a lot of people kind of just gave into the aura, to be completely honest. But for me, it was just the simple fact that I can't possibly buy into the idea that a team without a single new Gen 11 player is going to challenge Blue Lock, because they've already gone against players on that level. So why would a team of players lower than that level ever even challenge them realistically? Granted, yeah, there's instances where a team can have a player that is on that level while not being a new Gen 11 member. I mean, I'd argue that Blue Lock has two clear players who could be a new Gen 11 member, but I think in most situations, Blue Lock is going to be a special case and an outlier anyways. And so to me, I could just never see a world where this game would be close. The defenders they're going to have are going to be worse than Lorenzo, who Blue Lock has already gone up against. The strikers they're going to have are going to be worse than Kaiser, who Blue Lock has already gone up against. And even in the case of a player or two who are close to that level, I mean, we have Charles, for example, who maybe isn't exactly there, but pretty close. I don't think one or even two players like that are going to be enough to really challenge the entirety of Blue Lock. And especially when you have Asagi forming puzzles in chapter 1. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the next chapter literally opened up with Asagi scoring a goal. I also think it's a bit poetic that he ended the U20 game with a vision of a goal similar to this scene, and now he's at the point where he's doing it at the start of a match. This also somewhat ties on what Ego originally tasked him with. I was watching over footage of not the scoring aspect, but the game-changing moments, one specifically that he spoke of being right after a shot was blocked, which is really the only thing making me think he won't just score here. Maybe he'll do something else. But that's my own summary and thoughts on the chapter. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments below. Do you think this will be a blowout, or just disagree and think Nigeria may actually make it close? I think this game probably ends like 5-1. Honestly, I could see Onazi just flat out not even scoring and it being 5-0. Or maybe Nigeria locks in at the end and realizes that they need to step up and Onazi can't just carry them and score a goal at the very end of the match with it just being too late at that point. But even then, I still just can't imagine they get more than one. But other than that, that's going to be it for me.